Mr. Barnes?
Shall we bring security in for Mr.
I think we need security. Could we get security in here, please? We need security in here. We have an interloper. We have an interloper. Well, I know that we did get regrets from Councillor Thompson. I'm not sure about Councillor Gartner. So we'll just start. Welcome, Special Council Public Planning Meeting. It is Wednesday, January the 27th. Where the heck is this first month gone in 2016? It is 1 minute after 7, Madam Clerk. Councillors, declarations speaking your interest and general nature thereof, please. Seeing none, may I please have a motion to approve the agenda as has been circulated? Councillor Abel, thank you very much. Councillor Tom, second. Comments or questions on the agenda? All in favour? Contrary? That is carried. We'll move into the planning applications. We have a statement that I read. Welcome to Aurora's public planning meeting. The purpose of this public meeting is to inform the public and obtain public input regarding a proposed official plan amendment and proposed zoning bylaw amendments. No decision on the applications will be made tonight. For each planning application that will be considered by Council tonight, the following process will occur. Town planning staff will outline the purpose of the planning application being considered. The applicant will then be given an opportunity to make a presentation and address issues either raised by the staff report or public concerns which have already been filed. Following those presentations, members of the public will be invited to offer their comments or concerns with respect to the proposal. Once we've heard from the members of the public, I will ask members of Council if they have any comments with respect to the application. Excuse me. It should be noted that a comprehensive report will be prepared and presented to a future General Committee meeting assessing the merits of the application before us this evening and providing Council with a recommendation for consideration. It's very important that the town receive correct names and addresses of individuals having an interest in the planning applications we are hearing tonight. If you plan to speak at Council at this meeting, or if you wish to be notified of any further Council or committee meetings concerning the applications being considered, you must complete one of the green interested party forms that Linda is holding up, and please give it to Linda before you leave this evening. Under the Planning Act, the applicant or residents have a right to appeal any decision of Council on a planning application to the Ontario Municipal Board. But you must verbally express any comments or concerns here tonight, or submit any comments or concerns in writing to the town prior to Council adopting an amendment. The Ontario Municipal Board may dismiss all or part of an appeal made in respect of an application. This public planning meeting is being video and audio recorded. Your name, address, comments, and any other personal information are being recorded according to the Municipal Act and the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. This will help our clerk prepare accurate minutes and create a record that is available to the general public, including the town's website. Questions about this collection should be addressed to the town clerk, Town of Aurora. I will now ask the Deputy Clerk to confirm the notification to the public has occurred as required by the Planning Act. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With respect to item 1, applications for official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment, Metropolitan Square, Inc., 180, 190, and 220 Wellington Street East, file numbers OPA 2015-05 and ZBA-2015-15. On January 7, 2016, a notice of public planning meeting was published in the Auroran and Aurora Banner newspapers and given by mail to all addressed property owners within a minimum of 120 meters of the subject lands. Notice of the public planning meeting signs were also posted on the subject lands fronting on Wellington Street East and Industrial Parkway North. In regards to item 2, application for zoning bylaw amendment, Frank Luciani, 340 Ridge Road, part of lot 7-3, concession 1, file number ZBA-2015-13. On January 7, 2016, a notice of public planning meeting was published in the Auroran and Aurora Banner newspapers and given by mail to all addressed property owners within a minimum of 120 meters of the subject lands. Notice of public planning meeting signs were also posted on the subject lands fronting Ridge Road. Meeting notification for both items 1 and 2 has been provided in accordance with the Planning Act.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I will now ask the Director of Development and Planning Services to begin with the presentations. Mr. Lino.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our first item, our planner, Lawrence Cook, will provide an overview of the applications. And the owner is here this evening with his consultant team, and his land use planner, Angela Scaberis, will also be providing a presentation to council and the public. Lawrence?
Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. The application for discussion tonight here is an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment on 180, 190, 220 Wellington Street East. The purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment is to develop two 10-story residential condominium building with a connecting ground floor atrium and 2 levels of underground parking. To give everyone some context, this slide shows the subject land, which is at the northeast corner of Industrial Parkway North and Wellington Street East. The subject lands are currently occupied by Aurora Tire and Wheel and the Royal Wood Shop. The proposed application will be reviewed for consistencies with the following provincial, regional, and municipal policies. The official plan designated the subject land as Promenade General within the Aurora Promenade, which currently permits apartment residential buildings. Schedule 2 of the official plan regulates this area to have a minimum height of 2 stories with a maximum height of 5 stories. The extra height for bonusing may be granted if the proposal meets the list of criteria listed in the official plan. As such, the applicant's here tonight to amend the official plan policies to permit a maximum of 10-story for a high-density residential apartment building. The applicant is not amending the existing official plan designation, but only varying the policies within. The existing zoning reflects the use today. The current zoning on the property is M2 industrial, general industrial. The site is surrounded by commercial and industrial zoning. And in order to redevelop the site, the applicant has applied for an amendment to change the current zoning from general industrial to third density apartment residential RA3 exception zone. The list of exception zones are listed in the staff report. Note that majority of the exceptions relates to setback requirements. Here's just a slide that shows what the proposed zoning would look like in context with the surrounding land uses. A quick snapshot of the proposal. Once again, it's a 10-story building joined by 2-story common atrium. The total residential units, it's 296, varies from 1 bedroom to 3 bedroom plus den. We've got 2 levels underground parking. The site plan application have not been submitted at this time. The slide here shows a conceptual landscape plan, which I'll allow the applicant to present in more detail. But here are some other slides that will give you a better rendering of what it would look like along Industrial Parkway towards Wellington Street. This slide here is a view of looking down Wellington Street towards the St. Max Secondary School. Staff has circulated the application to internal and external agencies. Staff will review for compatibility and appropriateness. Of course, the building height and massing will be an item for discussion. Note that staff will have requested further information with regards to noise and source water protection. Note that the traffic study and urban design study will be peer reviewed. And of course, the applicant will need to satisfy the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority from a stormwater management point of view. Staff received mostly verbal comments during the circulation process, and those comments have been summarized in the report. However, mostly some of the comments will relate towards no commercial uses being proposed, as well as traffic concerns, of course, along Industrial Parkway and Wellington Street. So after tonight, staff will undertake a technical review and provide a comprehensive report with recommendation back to council at a future general committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Lawrence. Ms. Cabarrus.
My name is Angela Scaberis. I'm with Macaulay Show-Me Housing Planning Consultants. And as Lawrence had indicated, I'm here on behalf of the owner of Metropolitan Square, Mr. Robert Colagiacomo, who is here this evening. And I'm also joined by Richard Pernicki of NextTrans, our transportation consultant. I hope I can set the arrows. Lawrence has done a good bit of my work for me. So the site location, as he had indicated, is at the northeast corner of Industrial Parkway North and Wellington Street East. It is currently occupied by the Royal Woodworking Shop that has been at this location for quite a number of years, as well as Aurora Tire, which is at the immediate corner. Surrounded by a number of a variety of uses. Immediately east of our site is a commercial plaza comprised of 4 buildings that Mr. Colagiacomo also constructed, and 5 buildings. East of that is the St. Max Secondary Catholic High School, and further east of that at John Westway is the commercial plaza. To the north is a U-Haul storage facility and other industrial uses surrounding that. There is a residential development on the northwest corner, 5 stories with ground floor retail, and then there's a variety of commercial retail uses and industrial uses on the south side. So just to take a look quickly, this is looking north towards the site on Wellington Street. You can see there's quite a number of industrial buildings occupying the property. Royal Woodworking is no longer doing manufacturing on site. It is retail uses only, so quite a number of the buildings are not being utilized. They're vacant. The Aurora Tire is operational and does auto work, and I believe is currently also selling used cars. Site looking northeast from Center Street up Industrial Parkway North. You can see the back part of our property looking towards the U-Haul storage area. And this is looking from the subject site towards Center Street, so to the west, where you can get an idea of the residential building that's across the street, and again, some industrial uses on the northwest corner of Center and Industrial. So as Lawrence had indicated, we are designated within the Aurora Promenade area, and we are subject to the Aurora, to the Promenade Secondary Plan. That's the Aurora Secondary Plan. And some of the key official plan policies that are contained within that document: pedestrian-oriented mixed-use area. Buildings are to be stepped back beyond 4 stories, so anything higher than 4 stories needs to be stepped back. There's a minimum and maximum building lot coverage. Parking is to be located at the rear or below grade. There is a build within zone that's identified, and consistency with the town's urban design strategy for the Aurora Promenade is also required. So just to elaborate a little bit on that, the build within zone basically sets out a building footprint for the property, and it sets parameters to ensure that the building is sited on the property the way that in accordance with the urban design strategy. So in our instance, there are a minimum of 2, maximum of 4 meters setback from the front and exterior side lot lines. There's a minimum 80% of the main front wall that has to be located along the frontage, and 60% of the exterior side wall has to be located within the side yard, along the side yard. So the intent of that is that the building is to take up a fairly substantial part of the site. Interior side yard setbacks are not permitted, which means they are intended to be 0, except on lots with more than 40 meters of frontage, which we have. And then a setback of between 0 and 3 meters is permitted. And the minimum rear yard setback is 7.5 meters. Our proposed official plan amendment is to permit an increase in the height to 10 stories. Currently, a maximum of 5 stories is permitted, with 6 for bonusing or additional height, as Lawrence had indicated, subject to various criteria. We are proposing 10 stories, and the reason for this, there's quite a number of reasons. Proximity to the GO station, surrounding uses, the urban design strategy, the character features identified for this location. This is the only site within this area that remains to be redeveloped. So it's the only one really that has the opportunity to be able to have a significant presence within this location. As Lawrence had indicated, the site is zoned M2, so the current industrial zoning no longer complies with the policies of the town's official plan, so a zoning amendment would be required to bring it into compliance with the town's policies and implement the permitted uses under those policies. So our zoning amendment is to rezone from M2, and site-specific provisions would include height, the setbacks, parking, amenity areas, that sort of thing. So all of that would be incorporated into the site-specific bylaw. When we look at the Aurora Promenade urban design strategy, there are quite a rigorous set of design parameters that have been established. That document was prepared by the Planning Partnership on behalf of the town back in 2010. And the purpose was to create a framework of principles and guidelines which would support and assist in the implementation of the Aurora Promenade secondary plan policies. It provides clear direction and recommendations related to design and built form that articulate the town's vision for the area. The Planning Partnership are also the town's peer reviewers for development applications within this area, and our application has been forwarded to them for review. Our site is identified as a secondary entryway, and I can't see it on this slide, but I don't know if you can even see that. No, not strong enough. So it's identified as a secondary entryway. It's identified as a key potential corner site. It's identified as a key potential visual terminus, and also as key commercial frontage. So our secondary entryway is the location at Center Street. It aligns with Center Street. And as you can see right now, it's not very exciting. So our architect has paid specific attention to this, knowing that this was intended to be a focal area, as well as the visual terminus as determined in the strategy, urban strategy. So as I think one of the items, or one of the concerns that had been raised by the general public, was with respect to no commercial at grade. We do not have specific retail designated at grade, and this is again for a couple of reasons. The grading of the property is significantly lower. It sits quite a bit lower than the street. So this would mean having retail where you would have to step down, or you would have to take stairs to go up. In addition to that, as I pointed out, there is a commercial plaza to the east of us with 5 buildings comprised of retail, office, restaurants, a number of other uses. The plaza at the northwest corner of Industrial and John West Way has, again, quite a variety of retail and commercial uses. So the addition of additional space in our location really wouldn't add a lot to that. There is ground floor retail at the northwest corner at the existing residential building there. Not overly popular. I think they have a little bit of a hard time keeping tenants there, but it's not an area that really would attract much more any different uses than what's already there. The commercial use is not a requirement of the policy, however, it is encouraged. And one of the alternate uses which we are considering and the building has been designed for are 2-story units on the ground floor to allow for live-work units. So live-work units along Wellington frontage as well as the Industrial Parkway North frontage. Proposed details, again, 2 10-story residential apartments, first floor connecting atrium, 296 units total, 448 parking spaces with 2 levels of underground garage, building step backs on after every, I think it's 3rd or 4th floor the architect has accommodated. There are common outdoor and indoor amenity areas. Some are at ground level, some are elevated on 2nd floor. Common lobby atrium, and as I had said, 2-story units on the street level. There's a copy of the site plan, just the general outline, basically outline of the building footprint. The elevations, as Lawrence had showed you. You can see the step backs. The architect has also suggested change in materials, colors to further accentuate that step back. So just to, on the Industrial Parkway side, I don't know if you can see it aligned with Center Street. There is a common courtyard area, common entrance with the turnaround. There would be a feature in the middle. This would be for drop-off, minimal parking spaces just for short-term drop-off pickup. And the intent is to really provide an entrance feature at this location. All the access to the underground parking and to the service is along a rear laneway at the north end of the site adjacent to the U-Haul. And there would also be buffering along that edge as well to provide for some landscape treatment. So there you can see the service driveway at the north end of the site on the left side of the drawing, the courtyard feature in the middle that would look into the atrium area, the green at the top of the slide is at-grade amenity space, and then the 2, it's hard to see on this, but the 2 large L-shaped blocks just to the south of that green area are actually open terrace areas on the 2nd floor. So with respect to the site plan, minimum lot coverage required by the town is 50%. We are providing, I think it's 51. Parking, we are providing 448 parking spaces, and the current zoning provisions require 444. The secondary plan also has parking requirements with a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 2 spaces per unit, inclusive of visitor parking, and ours works out to 1.5. So we are meeting the zoning requirements for parking as well as the secondary plan requirements. The building, as I said, has been designed to address the urban design strategy guidelines. And being a key corner site, the building has been positioned so that the corner addresses the intersection. And there's a main entrance at that location as well. As I said, this is the only significant parcel that's remaining within the northeast block of the secondary plan that's available for redevelopment. It's the only site within this area that's identified as a secondary entryway. It needs to be a substantial development in order to meet the criteria and the vision of the urban design strategy. And it's the only opportunity the town has to implement the vision set out in the design strategy in this location, unless the apartment building across the street from us gets redeveloped. The lands to the east of us have all recently been redeveloped, so there isn't an opportunity there. And with the exception of height, all the other OP policies and all of the design strategy criteria and guidelines have been met. Sorry. So our next steps, we've received, I believe, most of the comments from the circulation, and we are just in the process of reviewing those. We will then revise and meet with the various departments and agencies as required and provide a resubmission. We are waiting for the comments, formal comments back from Planning Partnership on the urban design peer review, and we are waiting for comments back on the traffic study peer review. We will then do submit our resubmission and report back to General Committee, as Lawrence had indicated. Once that has taken place, we will then move forward with the submission of a site plan application, but we didn't want to do that at this time until we felt that Council was comfortable with the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Skibaris. I will now open it up to members of the public. If anybody has any comments with this particular application, I invite you to come up to the podium. Please give us your name, your address, and you have 5 minutes, and there's a clock just down the front here.
My name is Brian Hodson, and I live at 160 Wellington Street, which is the condo across the road from the proposal. I guess I have two concerns. One is the two 10-story buildings. I've lived in Aurora since 1980, and it has been generally, all the buildings in the past, as you know, have been 6 stories. And these are proposals for 2 10s. Does this mean that in the future, Aurora Council is this a shift now in the future where will previous buildings be 12, 15, 20 stories in the future? Like I say, since 1980, they've always been, quite low buildings. The second concern, which is more important, is of course the traffic. That corner, industrial in Wellington, is extremely busy at the 2 rush hours, morning and evening. And then you have a lot of cars coming along Center Street to make it even worse. So it's going to be an issue. It already is an issue now. And now with these 2 buildings being built, it could be a nightmare. And I understand tonight that this is being addressed, so I just want to mention that. So that's my 2 concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Anybody else care to speak with respect to this application?
Gordon Barnes, 11 Catherine, in the shadow of Centro, for those of you who don't know the area. Although many believe that Aurora does not need representation by wards, it seems time to realize that Aurora is no longer a small town. We need 21st century planning. This proposal fits both the Greater Golden Horseshoe and the promenade. Density rather than sprawl. The trouble seems to be with the bylaws. In the report, it notes that bylaws can have exemptions and provides some general outlines. I would like to provide a couple specifics that I think would be of value to both the building and the town. As noted, the site is attractive because it's close to the railroad. It is also close to the senior center. Therefore, attention to geriatric accessibility would be a good thing if it looks after wheelchairs, and the installation of handrails and grab bars to an extent beyond what is required by the code. We all tend to fall from time to time in the shower. It also mentions stormwater. Some of us believe that exceptional weather events will be more with us in the future. While the ground is open, making room for a double layer of parking, if it could also make room for a tank big enough to hold the first 50 millimeters of rainfall, that would reduce the load on the town stormwater sewer system. A leaky tank, so it drains out. Ghost load from our appliances sucks a lot of electricity out. If 3 wires went to each duplex rather than 2, one side could be continual power and the other side switched at the door, so you can shut things off when you leave the room. If the building would meet LEED, even silver requirements, it would be good for the environment and for the future tenants. And finally, in our diverse community, it would be nice to have at least 5% of the units designated as affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes.
My name is Dan Revington. I live at 48 Fleury Street in Aurora. And I have some grave concerns about this application. First, as the first speaker said today, there are serious traffic issues that already exist at the intersection. If you haven't done so, I would invite you to go through that intersection, go from Center Street, go east on Center Street in the morning towards Industrial Parkway. Turning left going north is just about impossible. And turning right is also very difficult with the proximity of the lights on Wellington Street. So Lawrence, when he was talking, said one of the issues that had been identified by residents was concern about traffic on Wellington Street. I think you have concerns before you even get onto Wellington Street. There are serious concerns right on Industrial Parkway. In addition to that, the first gentleman spoke about the 10-story buildings. If I understand correctly, I'm looking at page 4 of the report, just before you get into the boxes with the comparison of what's existing and what's proposed. And you notice the paragraph above that indicates that the applicant is proposing to rezone the property to permit 2 apartment buildings per lot, whereas the parent RA3 zone only permits 1 apartment building per lot. So not only are we going from 1 apartment building to 2, we're going to 2 10-story apartment buildings. And that certainly is not in accordance with any of the current developments that exist at that area. And with the 2 10-story buildings, you're going to get, as the presenter for the developer said, 448 new parking spots as well, which is going to be a real issue for and one of the parking lots actually exits right in front of Center Street, so that's going to be a real issue for the traffic in that area. And finally, you folks would have a much better grasp of this than myself, but I see you're losing Royal Woodwork and the tire place, which would be 2 businesses providing tax revenue for the town, and you're going to replace it with this residential structure. I'm not sure about your employment land policy, but I think that's something that the town would have to be concerned about. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Revington. Excuse me. Any other members of the public wish to comment at this point? Ms. Skiveris, do you have any comments with respect to those three concerns, or three groups of concerns, pardon me? Traffic being probably one of the most concerned, and then some interesting design comments by Mr. Barnes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't really have anything to add. As I had said, our traffic study is going to be peer reviewed by one of the town's consultants, the traffic study, so we will get comments back from that. With respect to Mr. Barnes's comments, he's correct. The problem is the bylaw. The bylaw does not currently, in its current form, comply with the town's policies, current policies. So a bylaw amendment is required. We are having to amend the current bylaw to reflect the intended use of the space, and I think that also addresses Mr. Remington's comments as well. With respect to the loss of employment lands, these areas are no longer included within the employment area of the town, so they were intended to be redeveloped for a higher and better use than what has been there historically. There are specific policies within the official plan and in the urban design strategy that speak to that. Specifically within this location of the town, it is recognized as a sort of a transitional area that does need a fair bit of help in rejuvenating it and bringing it to a more dynamic and pedestrian-oriented area. So with respect to the location of the driveway at Center, that was intentional and was required. It had to be across from, aligned with Center Street to avoid an offset, which, if Richard wants to speak to it, I think causes more of an issue when you've got traffic that's offset as opposed to aligned. But obviously the town's staff will be looking at that. I don't believe there was anything else that I needed to address.
Thank you, Ms. Skiveris.
Thank you.
Go back to the to members of the public. Any further comments from any members of the public at this point? In that case, I will close that portion of the meeting. Oh, please, sir. Don't be bashful. We don't bite.
This is Jason Hyatt, and I live at 75 Elm Grove in Oak Ridges. I work at the site. I'm pro-development, but at the same token, I do think the town would have to invest in this project and keep that in mind to alleviate traffic flow, because if they're not, it's very short-sighted. It's a regional intersection. It's not just an intersection. People come from as far away as Stouffville and Orangeville through this area. So that should be studied in the traffic flow. And I think it's just something that the town would probably have to expand the intersection to alleviate the traffic in the future. So it's a cost that I think the town would have to bear and should already be looked at regardless of, so any future development should have that considered. A widening of the lanes would allow less accidents, less traffic congestion, and general public safety. That's it, thanks.
Sir, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. If you could come back, and I apologize.
It's Jason Hyatt.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from members of the public? Please come up, sir.
I'm Jim Higgs from, I live at 181 Timpson Drive. My concerns, I think I echo most of what the other guys have said. I think the height of the buildings and so on, I commend them for encouraging density in the neighborhood, but our biggest problem is going to be, once again, traffic. If there's any way to widen the GO train crossing, and ease the access across there, it would be very nice. I've lived here since 1985, so I've seen this place, frankly, deteriorate in terms of trying to commute to and from work. And that intersection is supposed to be, I think, a detour route as well to the north. And I think that's going to be compounded. It's going to compound the problem quite significantly. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? All right, then I will close this portion of the public session. I will go to councillors. Any questions for the proponent? Councillor Perry. This is not to the report. This is to the proponent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was wondering if the first question is with regards to the phasing of the build. Is it contemplated that everything gets done at once, or is there going to be one building and then a second building?
Mr. Cabarrus?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's my understanding that the building would be constructed as one development.
Currently, you're seeking relief to allow for units within that building of 395 square feet, roughly. That seems small. I'm in a condo building as well. Maybe I just misread.
I don't think that's correct. I can check quickly, but
So just to scroll up, it says that the lot area minimums, the proposed RA3 exception zone requirements is 36.7 meters squared per dwelling unit. That would be the minimum.
Sorry, are you looking at the staff report?
I'm looking at page 4 at the very bottom of the staff report.
Mr. Mayor, I believe that's in terms of lot area. So the way that the town has typically calculated lot area, rather than them saying it needs to be a minimum of 2 hectares, you would base it on the number of units. So if you had 20 units, you would multiply 20 by 36.7 square meters to get the lot area, the minimum lot area. It's not suggesting that that's the size of the unit. It's to determine lot area.
I appreciate that. Can you go back to your presentation to the color images of the building? Even just the second last.
These ones? Or the landscape
I think
line?
one more. Just.
That one?
Is there one more after that?
No.
Okay, then the one prior to that. I counted 11 stories. I know that we're not here to discuss the actual built form, but so that I can have a good idea of what we're looking at in future, I think that would make sense, that it be a little bit more accurate in terms of what we're talking about.
I believe Mr. Mayor, I believe the top story that the councillor is referring to is actually screening, mechanical penthouse screening, which is not
there are
included in
2
height.
white units, 3 taupe units, 3 brown units, and then at the very bottom, 3 more taupe units. That's 11 by my count.
Okay, then yes, it should not be, that's correct.
So just so we can get a better idea of what we're looking at, I think it would be appreciated.
Okay.
I personally like the application. Now that you've clarified the size of the units, I'm on board that they're going to be a little bit bigger, but the height of the overall building is a concern for me. I wouldn't be, I think I need a little bit more explaining to me as to why we're looking at 10 stories right now. I'd feel more comfortable with something in the 6 to 7 range. I'm okay with no ground floor retail, but for me to move forward, I would feel much more comfortable if the height of the overall building was brought down. Thank you.
Any other councillors wish to have any comments with respect to the proponent? Councillor Maracas, Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I guess I might as well ask. I ask it every time. It's quite obvious you've gone through our official plan and you've read through it and looked at all the secondary plans and the promenade plan. I'm just curious, Councillor Perry touched on it, why we're looking at a building that is, well, two buildings, quite frankly, that is 10 stories when our height restriction specifically speaks to 5 with 1 as a bonus. I'm wondering why 5 or 6 was not proposed and put in front of us.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not obviously the developer or the builder, but I would assume that it's associated with cost, land cost. When you're doing brownfield development, redevelopment, remediation costs are significant as opposed to a greenfield development, so that all gets built into the yield and what works financially. The other aspect of this is anything higher than the 6 stories, 5 stories is a bonusing issue, so it would be obviously something that gets negotiated between the developer and the town in terms of compensation for that bonusing. If there are specific facilities or features or something that the town is looking for in this area, that would be discussed. One of the items I think Mr. Barnes touched on was affordable units, the opportunity for rental. A certain percentage of rental units is often used for bonusing. So the 10 stories, we, to be perfectly honest with you, when we came in before we filed the application, it was higher. We were advised to reduce the height. So the 10 is what we decided to come in with.
That's it for now. Thank you.
Very good. Councillor Gartner, Councillor Kim, Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you. In your comments, you mentioned key commercial frontage. Is that, were you mentioning that in conjunction with this being a secondary entranceway?
Yes, within the strategy document, in the graphics of the strategy document, there are a number of illustrations that pertain to this site. So the location across from Center Street is identified as a gateway or entryway, secondary entryway. The intersection is identified as a key corner site, and that was why the building was designed sort of to address the intersection, which is one of the examples in the strategy to do that. And then there's a graphic along Wellington Street that identifies it as commercial area, commercial feature. So within the town's secondary plan, under the permitted commercial uses or types of permitted uses, the live-work units are one of the items that can be considered. It doesn't need to be straight retail or commercial office.
Thank you.
Councillor Kim, Humphreys, Abel. Councillor Tom, did you have your hand up too? Okay. Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, when I saw the plan, I was kind of alarmed because I just started going to Aurora Tire for my tires. And I found the best place to get tires and to get the seasonal switch, and now I got to find another place. It's great service too.
We're not selling advertising at council meetings yet.
Through you, thank you for coming. So in terms of the architectural facade, is that a done deal in terms of what it looks like aesthetically, or is there room for changes to the external aesthetics?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as I had indicated, we have not filed an application for site plan approval yet, so there will be a more rigorous review in terms of design detail. The application is also being reviewed currently by the planning partnership, so they will provide comments with respect to aesthetics, building materials, that sort of thing as well. So there certainly is an opportunity to make modifications to the elevations and to the design. The architect that was selected for this project is very familiar with the area was involved in the design of the condominiums on Holland View. So he was very aware of sort of the town's requirements, and he was specifically selected for this. So a lot of thought did go into it, but certainly there is room for modification.
Yeah. The only reason, through you, Mr. Mayor, the only reason why I asked that is that I find that architecture, it comes and goes like fashion, and what seems nice now seems to be outdated 5-10 years from now. And Aurora, I think we're a very unique and a great place to live, and yet we don't look any different from any other municipality. And in fact, I see a lot of other municipalities that have a lot of, you know, what do you call it? What does HETV call it? Timeless architecture, or like, you know, the Victorian. They never get outdated. So it'd be nice to have something that would be of that trend. You mentioned about the live work units in the first 2 floors. I've never heard of that before. Has there been other? Can you illustrate some examples of other locations where live work units have been successful from a business and a living perspective? I'm
not aware of any in Aurora. I could be wrong. There are quite a number down in Toronto. There's a block of them on O'Connor Drive. It was a redevelopment near Victoria Park area that was really well done. There are a lot down at the south end of the city of Toronto, around CN Tower area, the ACC, Markham in Cornell. It's all over the Cornell development. They use them a lot there. Other areas of Markham, Vaughan, yeah, City of Vaughan. I can certainly provide the council with examples if you would like, but certainly City of Mississauga, most of the surrounding municipalities have incorporated them one way or another.
Thank you. In terms of the height, I'm not too fussed about the number of stories, other than the obvious impacts to traffic. If we're going to have a higher than the normal height in the buildings, this would be the opportune place to put it. And having higher density in this location, I'm hoping that it would relieve us to a certain degree in terms of provincial growth maximums or minimums, and this would help a long way in that regard. But given that we recently discussed single laning Yonge Street and the prime auxiliary road where traffic will be detouring into would be Industrial Parkway. So again, as other residents have mentioned tonight, traffic would be a big issue. And myself, having used Center Street in the morning, drop off my daughter at Pearson and go east, making a right turn, and there's only 100 feet, making a right turn and the residents making a left turn, I see a huge backlog there, so I'm not sure how that's going to work out, but that would be my only issue. But I'm not too fussed about the stories, so long as the traffic issue is resolved. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors Humphrey and Abel.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some of my questions have been answered and asked. Just a couple of things I've noticed through the current zoning and the exceptions to the zoning that are being requested in the plan. Just for example, the front yard minimum, really close to the road. Just in terms of widening, I wonder if we need to bring back a motion to widen industrial, because we really have some challenges right at that intersection. I mean, I love the building. I love the concept. Maybe a little too large scale at this point. I mean, if we could fit it there and it was a different type of traffic pattern, but is there any thought around why it needs to be so close to the road? I mean, it really narrows the municipality and the region to create some of that widening there that at the moment can potentially happen. Just wondering your thoughts on that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as I had indicated, the current zoning doesn't reflect the town's policies in its official plan, secondary plan, and the urban design strategy. Those are the requirements in those documents. So if we didn't do that, we would have to go add those to our official plan amendment. The town was quite intent on having an urban character here, and those requirements were put into policy form. So we're merely amending the bylaw to implement the official plan.
Yeah, fair. Thank you. That's all for now. Thanks.
Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The concept of the urban plan, I totally get it, residential and filling, and we've heard that. We are going to redo that intersection. That has been put forward. I think Councillor Maracus, you put something forward a year and a half ago for the north side, south side. Anyways, we know there has to be a right turn lane, and I think under consideration was the Center Street and GO and all the traffic. Also, we're going to use it, as pointed out, as a bypass. So you're going to have good in and out of that apartment. I see you are considering that, but you'll probably want to refer to what the region and the town has planned at that intersection. And I like the concept. I like the two towers. I like that central sort of look. I think it's a little maxed out scale. My biggest concern, and we'll address it later with staff, is we have a significant shortage of lack of affordable housing, rental units. And if I was consider bonusing, I would want to use that as a matrix going above the our 5-story to 6-story maximum. So if that is prevalent, then you've got my support in moving the height up on this. And I like the idea that you're going to try and give it some texture and some ideas like that. I think that's important. I share the concern of Councillor Kim. We don't want it to be dated quickly, so hopefully you're mindful of that as well. The unit across is just a straight stucco, and every one of them has their air conditioning units outside on the balcony. So are you having central air? I mean, we're not into that. We're just talking about zoning, but those are the sort of things that I'm talking about. Of course, we love plants and hanging vines and all that sort of stuff. So those are sort of my comments. I'm in full support of rezoning, and I know that's what we're talking about today. And you're taking comments forward from us based on where you're going to go with your site. So those are sort of my comments leading towards the site. My priority is the affordable housing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Abel. Mr. Cabarrus, there's actually an example in Aurora here of live work. It was called St. Andrews Village, well, still is called St. Andrews Village.
Okay.
And to say that it was less than successful would be an understatement. So I think that perhaps familiarizing yourself with the history of that facility, now maybe because it was 30 some odd years ago, it was ahead of its time, behind its time, I don't know, but it certainly did not prove successful there. So I think that's something to be aware of. Traffic is always a concern. Last month, I think we had an application from a person who owns a home on Centre Street, right beside the train tracks, who wanted to put in a daycare facility, and traffic was expressed as a concern then. As you're no doubt aware, Metrolinx GO is looking at the 15-minute RER up at this point up to Aurora, which will create its own traffic issues. Anybody who happens to come through that intersection between 4:30 and 6:30 is challenged, should we say. Certainly, I think traffic is a concern that's been expressed, and I think fairly expressed. So I think that has to be considered with respect to your consultant, and certainly when the town looks at any peer reviews. Overall, I think it's a perfect place to put something like this because it is within walking distance of the GO, and I think that that's an extremely attractive feature, and I think that this project will do very well. You've also heard concerns with respect to the height. It is kind of massive compared to some of the other buildings that are there now. Who knows, they may change. So I think there's some issues there. So anything, as you come forward, anything you can do to perhaps maybe further soften the lines with respect to that. I'm not a big fan of buildings right up to the lot line, but that's me. And I know that that's certainly part of the promenade plan. That was certainly a design criteria in the promenade plan. So that's just one person in their opinion. So I just some comments from me moving forward, but I think overall this is a great place to put a facility like this, and that's certainly fitting with what we wish to do in terms of moving to higher density in order to cut down on the sprawl that we're all faced with. So thank you. I will, Councillor Maracas, Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I just have one more question. I'm wondering if I can get the picture of the overview from up top.
The aerial, or?
The aerial would be good. That one that had the brown, I think it was the last one.
Oh, the landscape plan.
Yeah. Yes, this one. Yes. That's fine. The service access road that goes into, I guess, the underground parking,
yes.
Would that be correct? I'm just wondering, was there any thought given to actually attaching it to the commercial plaza and allowing access through there?
We did look at it, and as I'd indicated, it's the same owner, so it would have been ideal. However, there is a substantial grade differential between the two properties. It's very significant, and there's quite a large retaining wall there. So the only place where it really would be feasible is right kind of in the middle of the site, and there's already a building on the property to the east. The only place we could have done the connection would be up at the far north end, and that's where there's a real significant grade differential. We did look at that, but it's not feasible.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm looking at page 16. It's the conceptual elevations. And you did mention that there is certainly a significant drop on Wellington going into the property.
Yes.
I'm just curious as to why it was presented as a concept. It looks like people can walk right in from Wellington right into the units.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, this is schematic. It wasn't, it doesn't take into account the grades, specific grades on the property. It was really to show intent and sort of the character of the building that was to be constructed. However, I think on our site plan drawings or on our grading drawings, it does show the differential there. That was our preferred option, but it's not feasible, and I can't account for the graphic, but there is a substantial difference.
Looks a little misleading to me.
I'll take a note of that. Thank you.
Councillor Puri.
I just want to, I do like what is in front of us. I just wanted to reiterate that. And I understand that if you could make this building look really ugly if you really wanted to fall within the 5-story guideline that we have in our policies. You could easily build up the front, you could build up the middle section. That's one of the reasons I'm okay with having something a little bit higher, because it does look so nice. And it would be difficult for us to control that otherwise. So if you could maintain the aesthetics, I'd be very happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Any other comments from council for the proposal, to the proponent, excuse me? All right, then I will close this portion of the meeting, and I will ask someone to put Linda, if you could bring the resolution up, please. If someone will put that on the floor, please, so we can discuss it. Councillor Abel, is there a second, please? Councillor Kim, thank you. Speakers to the staff report, please. Councillor Maracus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Overall, I do like the concept. It is an area that we've identified for intensification within our promenade plan. And so I think it's an area that we do need to develop with something close to it. But for me, the real sticking point is the height. Any which way you slice it, we're not only approving 10 stories, we're actually approving 2 buildings, 10 stories each. So to me, it's, you know, I can't get beyond that. And, you know, when some of the comments I heard was that, you know, that's, you know, we need to make some adjustments, be flexible, make the amendments possible. We need to move to the future. I look to a city in the United States such as Washington, D.C., and they've had height restrictions since 1910, and they haven't changed, and they're a city of 658,000. So I don't see why we can't stick with our height restrictions and be firm on that. I think that's the one thing we can be firm with. And I think it's by us approving something like this at 10 stories, we set that precedent. And we've seen it in other applications that have come before us where we've allowed to move a little bit more than what we do allow. And we give that amendment. And then the next one comes and asks for a little bit more. And so I'm not comfortable doing that. Otherwise, I like it. I like the idea. I like the concept. I also, you know, would prefer to see, I'm not comfortable with the setbacks. I'd like to see it a little bit more set back to allow us to widen that road. We all know we have issues with Industrial Parkway. I would hate to think that we allow something like this and then we get stuck where we can't widen that road and do the things. I mean, just today we received an email with a schematic drawing of as far as looking at how the road would be widened if we added in a transit stop and some bicycle lanes, and I think something like that is, you know, unique in what we would like to see in that area, and we wouldn't be able to do something like that if we allowed the setbacks at 3 meters. So I'm not comfortable with that, but I guess the setbacks and the heights for me are sticking points, and I wouldn't be able to approve the application the way it sits in front of me today. So without those changes, I wouldn't be in favor. Thank you.
Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. During the delegation, the proponent was discussing some of our policies, and I just wanted to get some clarification from the Director of Planning on a couple of matters. The first one I'd like to know is the promenade study and then the guidelines that comes out of that study was passed in 2010. Is that not correct?
Mr. Rudo?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
When was our last official plan update?
Same time. 2010.
Same time.
Same time.
So wouldn't it follow that our zoning bylaws and the promenade plan are in line if they were updated at the same time?
Mr. Rudo?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Ideally, but the zoning bylaw, we're still dealing with our parent zoning bylaw that dates back to '78, and we are in the midst of updating our bylaw. So we're hoping to bring that final bylaw to council sometime this year. So currently, the zoning bylaw does not conform with the official plan in many instances, particularly the promenade secondary plan.
The proponent also talked about how the design guidelines, the plan is compliant with the design guidelines. Can you speak to that as well? Is that the case?
Mr. Rudo?
So you, Mr. Mayor, I can't say for certain at this point. We are waiting for our control architect, the author of the guidelines. They're reviewing the application as we speak. Based on what we've seen, it's looking like they are pretty close to the guidelines. I mean, there's a difference between the guidelines. The guidelines are there to really provide that sort of direction and guidance to the development industry from a sort of design perspective, built form. And again, we've got our official plan policies that they're trying to adhere to really saving except for the increase in height.
So my question would be then, in a case such as this, what takes precedent, guidelines or the zoning bylaw?
Mr. Mayor? Through you, Mr. Mayor, the official plan prevails over the guidelines.
Right. So thank you. So the exceptions they're asking for are they're exceptions to the bylaw as it is today, and so they aren't really in compliance. If one supersedes the other, then I'll side with the zoning bylaw every time, and not guidelines. And maybe those guidelines will help us update that bylaw, but at this moment, they aren't. So again, I'd like to say from the outset, after having clarified some of those things, that I, as well as many of the councillors at the table, agree with development of the site. I think that we've stated it in the promenade study, we've outlined it in our plans, and I don't see why they couldn't have come to us with a plan that adheres to the zoning bylaws, or at least more closely adheres to them without as many exceptions. The height being one, doubling of the apartment buildings per lot. I mean, the setbacks, the zoning bylaw talks about no less than 9 meters from the street on the front yard, interior side yard, and exterior side yard setbacks, and there's a 6 meters difference between what our zoning bylaw says and what they're asking for. I mean, there was an email today about the widening of Industrial Parkway. Industrial Parkway was intended to be a bypass for Yonge Street. Yonge Street is congested constantly because of the way our old heritage forms have restricted the town from expanding to allow for better traffic flow. So they built Industrial Parkway, so not only to allow for industrial and mixed commercial uses, but as a bypass for that area, so that commuters didn't have to go through the slow area of town, they could go around. So if we want to widen Industrial Parkway to facilitate that, or at least the intersection, then we might be euchred if we just say, yeah, sure, 3 meters from the street, that's no problem. So I have huge problems with that. For me, it's the height and it's the setbacks. And I mean, you know what? I guess you could make an exception perhaps for 1 or 2 buildings on the lot. But again, there's 7 bylaw exceptions being asked for, and they're not minor. They're very substantive and substantial. So to me, if you're asking for 1 and it's substantial, then we can take a look at that. But we're asking for a doubling of the apartment buildings per lot. We're asking for 6 meters on front, side, and exterior side. And we're asking for 3 or even 4 stories than what we usually give. So for me, there's a lot more work that has to be done for this plan to satisfy where I would like to see it. And it's really a shame, because I think we all agree that this area needs to be redeveloped. It's part of our plan, and so I'd love to see this area redeveloped. I'd love to see a condo building. I'd love to see something that has the aesthetics that you presented. I have nothing wrong with all that, but I'm going to have a hard time approving a plan that has all of these exceptions, and those are my comments at the current time.
Councillor Humphries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Without being repetitive, Councillor Tom said a lot of the things that I was a little concerned about. Absolutely height, and so without being repetitive, just a quick question through you, Mr. Mayor. The next step for staff is to take these comments and come back and bring forth the best recommended overall guidance to council, right, in terms of what you heard this evening, and then our official plan and zoning amendments and so on that we can deal with. Just wondering about the next steps for that, if you don't mind.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, if council directs us to come back, I mean, the option is either to another public meeting to take a look at any revisions that the applicant may propose, and then ultimately, a final recommendation once staff completes its review.
Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So here's what I'd like to suggest. One of the biggest concerns, and I think we've said it several times, is the widening of industrial is probably very key in our very near future, considering some of the things we talked about even last night. So just really concerned with the frontage and the absolute, sort of the triple of what they're asking for compared to our current, I think, zoning, but it sounds like it's not really compared to our zoning bylaws way behind our official plan. So I think what I need is staff to come back with some of some guidance for us, and I would prefer a public planning meeting just because of those concerns are so highlighted, and the height of those buildings perfect space, perfect, love the layout, love the design. It's just little further inset and lower, I think would have been perfect.
Councillor Kim, Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the builder would know by now, when you come to try to build something in Aurora, you dare not call Aurora the city of Aurora. Lord help you. It's the town of Aurora, and I understand the concerns of my fellow councillors. But another concern that I think everyone agrees on is that we need affordable housing. Everyone says that housing costs are too expensive. Our kids can't afford homes, and the simple equation is supply and demand. And certainly, because there's insufficient supply, hence the prices of homes are going up. And we recently, I think you can't have it both ways. And I know that Aurora ourselves, by intensifying, it's not going to help the overall supply and demand balance in Ontario. But I think all the municipalities in Ontario has to realize that it's really simply supply and demand. And I think, and I do agree that, sure, in a 4 by 6 kilometer area of Aurora, 10 stories does seem high. I think I'm personally willing to live with it if there's a willingness of the builder to provide some affordable housing within that structure. As the mayor said, if there's a little softening of that, that'd be appreciated. But I think overall, we can't keep on saying that we need affordable housing, and yet we're not providing the housing from a municipal perspective. So we got to look at both sides. And through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Ramuno, with respect to the jurisdiction that we have, and that this is the promenade, part of the promenade, or the tertiary part of it, there are no sidewalks on Industrial Parkway, and I know that, as Councilor Maracas did allude last year of widening, is there, there's no point putting in a sidewalk at this point if there's going to be a widening down the road, but a sidewalk to be pedestrian friendly to the family leisure complex or the dog park, to make the residents of this new complex, potential new complex, to make it neighborly. Is there a possibility to work with the builder to perhaps have a further setback, to build a secondary lane for 100 meters or so and have sidewalks? Can you speak to that, please?
Mr. Rudo.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. Now, we've heard the concerns about traffic and the potential perhaps for road widening. We have our IS department, and I think this is with direction from council, to take a look at the Industrial Parkway north and south in that intersection with respect to the potential for widening. So we're going to see comments from them with respect to trying to secure widening if it's appropriate and warranted along Industrial Parkway. And in addition, we'll seek confirmation from the region of York to ensure that if they need any additional widenings along Wellington Street, that's under their jurisdiction. And I've made a note here. We'll speak to our traffic staff in IES to try and address the need for, if there is a widening, also to accommodate, obviously sidewalks and cyclist lanes if required, and we'll certainly bring that back to council with a new proposal with respect to a conceptual plan for how that building would be placed on that lot in its relation to Industrial Parkway and Wellington Street.
Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. I was shocked when I saw this proposal, not for the same reason as Councillor Kim. I have a couple of great tire places if you want some names. Because it's just 2 10-story buildings is so far outside of what our official plan was looking for. I think we have a wonderful opportunity through this development to accommodate new growth through intensification, and I think that's what we're looking for. And I believe, I was around at the time, I believe the intent was to cap these buildings at 5 stories. And if a developer wanted more, they would need to negotiate the bonusing with us. And here we have an opportunity to do that. People have mentioned affordable housing. The other issue is it's very close to the GO station. We have a huge problem with GO parking. It's really affected our stable residential area negatively, our cultural precinct area. So it would be a good opportunity to explore the idea of pay parking to service the GO users. I also think the intent of leaving the M2 zone, we didn't change the zoning when we did the official plan. I think the intent of that was to create exactly the kind of situation we can have now, which is to negotiate with the developer and to negotiate very strongly with the developer to get what we want and what we need, frankly. With respect to the zoning, changing it to res mixed use, my understanding of mixed use is development that blends combination of residential, commercial, cultural, sometimes industrial, institutional. I know the employment uses on this land are not very strong, and I don't know how many people are employed, perhaps Mr. Muno does, but to completely lose an employment function and the revenue from employment tax dollars on this very large property, I think it would be a mistake to do that. So I would definitely, this needs to come back to another public planning meeting. I agree with everything that really almost everything that's been said at this table with respect to how this needs to look when it comes back. And sincerely hope it is going to look very different when it comes back to us, and also that the developer will have thought about how they can serve the public good through a bonusing agreement with the town.
Councillor Abel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, do we have an affordable housing strategy here in Aurora?
Mr. Mayor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, we don't. The York Region does, but we do within our official plan under our density bonusing provisions have a policy whereby we can achieve other services or facilities such as affordable housing through the bonusing of height on individual development applications. That would be through an agreement.
All right, so I hear that, I heard the proponent speak of that. So I think that when we should try and encourage it. And I think with council, we should know a little bit about that as well. I am concerned that we are going to move forward with traffic on industrial, and I don't think we are sharing that information as well, what our intent is. And you did allude to that. You said you were going to go talk to IES and let them know about that. I think that's key moving forward. I agree with everyone about the footprint. If we see a bus lane or something and that footprint is there on that side anyways, on that west side, we may regret not at least exploring that. But today, we're just, if I'm reading this, we're recommending to receive, they take notes outlining recommendations and options. So we're not approving 10 stories today. I just want to be clear, Mr. Mayor, through you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, this is simply the first public planning meeting just to seek input from council and the public on the proposed applications.
Thanks. We usually go to a second planning meeting when there's big concerns, and I think that's been expressed, so I'm for that. I think we can work quickly for the proponent. I am sad to see Royal Woodworking move on. They did employ people. More than that, they were great community partners. When I first came here, the first sponsor I picked up for my kids at Little League was Royal Woodworking. I always remember that. So it would be sad to lose them. But at the same time, we are growing, we are intensifying. This is exactly what the plan called for. So, Mr. Mayor, I think everyone's captured most of the other concerns. I think we should really, if we're going to address affordable housing, have a strategy and move towards that. So that's another topic for another day, but I think going forward we should, because I'm not confident in the region. I mean, we're just a little drop in the bucket to the region. Their concerns are elsewhere. So I think it's best that we get our own strategy forward.
I'm pretty sure all the region's concerns are right with the heart of York Region. Mr. Ramuno, just a couple of comments from me. First of all, my understanding is that if our zoning bylaw was up to date with our OP, that we would not be having this discussion. Can you confirm or deny that?
Yeah, to you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's correct. And we are in the middle of a zoning review. We've had a couple meetings, a workshop with councils, and we will be bringing that forward again. And our intention was to provide a promenade zoning overlay over the lands that are designated promenade under our official plan.
So if we have an issue with zoning bylaws, it's really our tardy planning department. Is that right? In council, you may recall that I believe the McDonald's application fell into this, as well as the car dealership on St. John's. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes, that's true.
So we've had this in a couple of instances, and as we work towards getting our comprehensive zoning bylaw review done, a lot of these issues would not come to our council because it would be covered. I can appreciate Councillor Tom's point of view, but it's really not outside the norm in terms of what they're asking for, something essentially to be moved up from when we will bring it forward. I think that the other issues that we need to look at certainly is the traffic, how we look at configuring Industrial Parkway. I think we need to perhaps go back to our traffic people and see if we can't get a bit creative there. I think we need to have the discussion with Metrolinx as well as to how that works. The reality is that I suspect that the applicant has planned based on what the lot lines are. So if we want to widen industrial, we have to get creative in a number of ways, one of which is we need to take land from one side or the other. So that's an issue. Royal Woodworking actually sold their manufacturing, or moved their manufacturing facility to Bradford a couple of years ago. So this has been a retail outlet for a while, and they're actually looking at relocating within Aurora. I've had those discussions with them. So with any luck, we'll at least keep them as a client within our confines. So I think we need to keep those issues, those points in mind. I would agree that coming back to a future public planning meeting would probably be the best route to go. I believe I have Councillor Maracas for a second time, and Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I guess, to Mr. Ramuno. Just that I want to clear it up. Maybe I'm mistaken, but with the comprehensive zoning bylaw review, are we looking to change our height restrictions?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, the heights would be in line with the OP height permissions, but some of the other provisions and classifications, but not the heights.
And as a follow-up, through you, Mr. Chair, what about the setbacks?
No, again, through you, we would just transfer those setbacks and those provisions in the OP into our zoning bylaw.
So essentially, we would be here in the same place.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, perhaps they would probably only require some exceptions to the zoning bylaw, because they're complying in a lot of instances. But
thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess my point is that the bigger concerns around the table are the setbacks and the heights, and considering those ones wouldn't be the ones that would be changing, I think the concerns would still be valid around this table. So, so I mean, I agree with everyone, and I think everyone is in agreement that this should come back to public planning. So I guess, I mean, if everyone's okay with it, I wouldn't mind putting an amendment to, or you want to allow us, okay, that's fine. Sure.
Councillor Perry, Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, that was my question. We've gotten into the habit of having one public planning meeting and then a month later having a public planning meeting on the same issue on almost every item. So through you to Mr. Amuno, if we sent this to a general committee meeting, is it still your expectation that the comments made around the table tonight will get looked at, resolved? Because it's been my experience that we'll go to one public planning meeting, we'll come to a next, nothing's really changed. You know, people are more upset because nothing's really changed. Would it make more sense just to go to a general committee meeting and then to council, and if people are still upset around the table, then we can deny the application? But if the work that we've spoken about is reflected in a future report, you know, we can move forward from there. So for me, it's not that we're creating a backlog, but there's almost duplication in the way that we do work. We set our expectations. We've let everybody know that we'd like to see, I think, overall a change on the heights. Some people want to see a change in the setbacks. Those were our comments. Those were the comments of the residents. If we just bring it forward towards a general committee meeting and those changes aren't made, I think, you know, you're sort of left, you know, in a difficult position to move forward. But we've just gotten in the habit of always coming back to a public planning meeting, and that's a fairly recent thing, that it happens at almost every meeting, that we set things back for public planning. So through you to Mr. Amuno, can there be changes made between now and a public planning meeting? Mr. Amuno.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, and I've heard the concerns. So as the applicant, and we'll try and address all those. I mean, in this instance, I'm in council's hands, but in this instance, because I still think we're waiting for some additional information surrounding sort of the transportation network, the road widenings that we may want to see along Industrial Parkway, and how that's going to function. That may take us, a couple months. So I think it would be appropriate to bring it back to a public planning meeting, because I do want to work with the applicant to see what sort of changes they're going to be able to make, and we'll bring that back for council to take a look at. And by then, hopefully, we will also have the additional information relating to the traffic study and any works or widenings that we may require along Industrial and Wellington.
Thank you, Mr. Amuno. My point wasn't towards this, but it's a general trend that I've been noticing, and I just wanted to ask the question. Thank you.
Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. Director Amuno, when is the comprehensive zoning bylaw review up for debate and ratification at council? Sir.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we were our last public meeting was sometime last fall, I believe, and we were trying to schedule it back for one final public planning meeting for council with the final draft version, and then we'll seek direction from council, hopefully at that point, to bring it back for council's passing.
When?
We're shooting for this spring.
So, thank you, Mr. Amuno. So, my only reason for asking that is because the comprehensive zoning bylaw review, whatever fruit that may bear, has yet to be ratified by this council, and therefore I will use and guide myself by our current zoning.
Councillor Marcus, you wanted to put an amendment on the floor.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll put an amendment to bring this back to a future public planning meeting.
Okay. Councillor Gartner, seconded. Comments or questions on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment? Contrary? That is carried. To the main motion as amended. All in favor? Contrary? That is carried. So we'll be coming back to a future public planning meeting. Thank you very much for coming. We shall move on to item 2. Mr. Ramuno.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, our planner, Jeff Healy, will provide a overview of the next item, and the owner is here with their planning consultant, Mr. Claudio Bruto. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Ramuno, and good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. The application before you tonight, the second item being a zoning bylaw amendment at 340 Ridge Road. Proposal tonight is essentially a zoning application to permit a future severance application. The zoning on the property today is a rural Oak Ridges Moraine zoning, and the proposal is to rezone the lands to a detached dwelling first density residential exception zone and a major open space exception zone to permit one additional residential lot. And it's also noted that the existing detached dwelling that's located on the northern portion of the lands is to remain as is. And you can see from the location map, the subject lands are located at the western edge of Ridge Road. You'll note that this is a triangular shaped lot located at the western edge with the GO rail tracks located along the western side of the property. There is also an unopened road allowance that's owned by the town located on the southern edge of the subject lands. Our official plan, this land is designated as both environmental protection area and estate residential by the town's Yonge Street South Secondary Plan, also known as OPA 34. The estate residential designation is limited to essentially one detached dwelling per lot, accessory structures and compatible home occupations. And then the environmental protection area is considered to be our most protective and ecological function within the secondary plan. And it protects significant landforms within the Oak Ridges Moraine. As you can see on the second figure, the lands are split between the estate residential and the environmental protection. You'll note the environmental protection area designation takes up about 3/4 of the property, and then the estate residential takes the southern tip of the property. So essentially we're here tonight because the zoning bylaw, as it currently stands, the rural Oak Ridges Moraine Zone only allows for structures built on lots legally existing as of November 15, 2001. So therefore, to allow for an additional dwelling on the property requires an amendment to allow that structure to be constructed. The existing house on the subject lands was approved by minor variance to the Committee of Adjustment back in April of 2005. And then this application tonight is as a result of the severance proposal to allow for one additional lot. We are here tonight for the rezoning application and to have an open space zone along the western edge of the subject lands. And the purposes for that is to allow for a future trail system. So you can see from the zoning map, the existing zoning at least is rural Oak Ridges Moraine, and that encompasses the majority of the lands along Ridge Road, and then estate residential lands located on the south side of Ridge Road and into the estate residential neighborhood to the south. So staff have taken a preliminary review of the application, and we have a number of comments for consideration. There's so some of the items that we brought is to assess the appropriateness of the proposed development and consideration and location of the existing residential and rural uses in the area. We're also looking at the review of the environmental reports that have been provided by the planning consultant to conform to the secondary plan, OPA 34, and policies of the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan. We're looking to review the existing and proposed access easements on the property, and with having an additional lot on the subject lands, how the additional access how the easement would work with that additional lot. And finally, to review appropriate zoning classifications and bylaw exceptions to address components such as proposed configuration for the subject lands. So this figure is the proposed lot severance that's been provided in the applicant's planning justification report. So as you can see, the retained lands to the north are the existing dwelling, which was approved back in 2005 by the Committee of Adjustment. You can see the main structure, including the detached garage. And then to the south, you will see the proposed additional lot with a few configurations for driveway and access to Ridge Road as well. In conclusion, staff will undertake a technical review of the subject application addressing the outlined matters, and as well as comments received from public and council this evening. And a comprehensive report with recommendations and options will be presented for consideration at a future general committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Mr. Bruto.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, committee, and staff, and the public. My name is Claudio Bruto. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Luciani, who joins me in the audience this evening. I want to thank staff for the time and effort put forth in bringing the report this evening forward to you. We're substantially satisfied with the conclusions that were reached as part of the recommendation this evening, is to refer it back to staff for continued consideration. I do have a few salient points to bring forward to you this evening, and then subject to any comments that you might receive from the public. I believe that our most immediate neighbor is here, and he has spoken to our client, indicating that his main concern is that there only be one additional house permitted on the lot, as opposed to what he thought might be 4 or 5 being permitted on site, because there's a plan of subdivision to the south, which had been proposed for 4 lots. So I want to start by just briefly touching on the official plan. We looked at the official plan, and our planning rationale report, which we provided to staff, clearly guides the direction of the planning policy to indicate that we are in complete conformity with the official plan. The official plan that you have for Ridge Road is very, very specific. It indicates lot sizes, that they should be generally large. It also advises that there could be a lot division on Ridge Road, notwithstanding the Oak Ridges Moraine or any other policy. Ridge Road has been determined as an area which could substantiate lot division, subject to a few tests. The most critical test in the official plan is the size of the lot, and that it should not be less than 1.5 acres. So this lot is almost 4 acres, so the 2 lots that we are creating will both be over 1.5 acres. It also speaks to environmental, not degrading the environment, and the report that we've prepared by WSP Consulting advises us quite clearly that there actually could be a net beneficial gain to the environment with a reforestation plan on the site of the property, which is going to be below 500 square meters, and that's a threshold in your official plan. It speaks to having units generally under 5,000 square foot footprint. The lot does have water supply available to it. That's a critical component, so we only need a private septic system, which is being proposed for the site. As you see, it's at the end of Ridge Road. It is a very, very much an oversized site for this particular property, and our client had bought it with the intention of dividing it into 2 lots as principal residence and an additional residence to the south. What I also want to bring to your attention, and it's critical, this is an opportunity for the town to continue to fulfill its desire to provide a completely linked trail system. Mr. Luciani's property, and I'm wondering if we can go back 1 slide or a couple of slides. If you look, okay, that was good. Oh. At the west end along the CN track, and it's in the staff report, there is an indication in your official plan and the Trails Master Plan that that is a desirable location for a trail to link to the unopened Ridge Road on the south side of our client's property, and then continuing further to the east. this may be the only opportunity, as Mr. Luciani is the owner of the property and future builder of that site, to acquire the necessary trail at no cost to the town. Our client is also prepared to provide some reforestation in that area should the need arise, and so that trail will be available to the future residents of Aurora in perpetuity at no cost. So I want you to keep that in mind when we do come back for the future public or for the future committee meeting. So I want to start in sort of bring to some closure the discussion on the official plan. If you have an opportunity to read our report, and staff will review it and have reviewed it, we do meet all of the tests of the official plan. That is very critical. We don't need an official plan amendment. We need a zoning bylaw because it's zoned ORM, and we're bringing it into a residential zoning. But we are not seeking any variations on the zoning bylaw as far as lot area is concerned, or frontage from my perspective, because it has dual frontage on Ridge Road and on the unopened road allowance. That's a detail, it's a technicality that I think we can overcome with staff. What I've seen in the comments is not pertaining to the official plan, but rather to the environment. And we've done a very comprehensive report authored by WSP that indicates to the municipality and to the Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority, who are the prevailing authority on the environment, is that we can demonstrate a net beneficial environmental gain on this particular development. So on the official plan, I think I've spoken in great detail about that. We have provided a very comprehensive support documentation, including noise, including hydrogeology, hydrology, servicing, and planning to substantiate the requests made by the municipality in our pre-submission consultation meeting. So it is a complete application. I don't believe that there has been an outcry from the public that you'll obviously make note of yourself. I do agree that we should be going to a committee meeting rather than to another public meeting. And I look forward to working with staff to address the concerns that have been raised from the preliminary circulation of the application to various agencies, and particularly to the staff, technical staff at the town of Aurora. So with that, I'll complete my submissions to you, and I'd welcome any questions that might arise from my presentation, and then of course any concerns that are raised from the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bruto. I will open it up. Any members of the public who would like to speak? If you can give us your name and your address, sir, and you have 5 minutes.
Sure. My name is Amir Samari. I'm representing the owner of property at 302 Ridge Road, my brother, the adjacent property, the immediate adjacent property. And the only concern that I had regarding this application is that I was a little confused as to the reason that it is necessary for the zoning to be amended or changed from what it is now to the R1 residential, because it was my understanding that the current zoning would have allowed for what Mr. Luciani is wanting to do, what he's proposing to do, and I just didn't see the reason for that change. And the only concern I have for the change is that if that zoning changes to R1 as it was stated before, and through some turn of events Mr. Luciani ends up selling his property, and the next owner who takes that property wants to do more than what was proposed originally, would that ever be allowed or not? So is there a possibility that because of the zoning amendment, would there ever be more than one residential unit going up there? Because to the unit residential we have no objections at all. But if there be ever any more as a result of this zoning bylaw amendment, that's the only concern I have.
Mr. Ramun, if I could address that to you.
Certainly. To you, Mr. Mayor, the request for the zoning is to add just the one additional creation of one additional lot for one additional home. That's all the proposed zoning would allow. If that would be approved, and someone was seeking additional units, they'd have to go through the same process, in fact, probably an official plan amendment application. But what we're dealing with here now is just the rezoning for the new lot creation for the one additional detached dwelling.
Any other questions from members of the public? Council, any questions for the proponent with respect to this application? Councillor Kim.
Yes, sir. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Ramuno. So, in response to the resident's question, so you're saying that if we allow the zone change, that in the future more than one dwelling would not be allowed? Is that what you're saying?
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Okay. And
do you have any questions?
Oh, sorry, I forgot the.
It's okay.
Just hear it, just in case.
I noticed that, through you, Mr. Mayor, the division of the property is on the eastern part of Ridge Road that goes almost north-south. Is there a reason for that? I'm wondering whether the Ridge, I haven't had the good fortune of going onto Ridge Road, so I'm not as familiar with it, but on the southern part that's going east-west, is that an active road now? If so, I'm just wondering why both entrances to both properties seems to be, or is that an entrance? Are both entrances off of the north-south Ridge Road?
I can speak to that, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Kim. The preference of my client is to be able to utilize a driveway along the unopened Ridge Road. Right now it's gravel and you can walk there, but it's not a formal right-of-way in the true sense of an urban or even a rural cross-section road. But our preference is to have the driveway there. We are showing both as an option. Right now, what you see existing to the existing driveway to the existing house where Mr. Luciani lives, we would be proposing a joint access to this new dwelling. So it would be one driveway, which would be mutual by way of easement, and then one accesses the new property, and one would continue on to the existing. It's interesting to note that Mr. Luciani's driveway, in fact, crosses over by way of easement, just the way this subdivision was laid out, by our neighbor to the east, the new neighbor. So he has an easement right for that driveway, as you can see across that property as well. So Ridge Road could remain as is. It is owned by the municipality. It is a right-of-way, and that's where the trail would go as well.
Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the proponent. Following on Councillor Kim's thoughts, I'm just looking at it. Could it be possibly that we don't want the driveway, and when I say we, sorry, I'm not saying us, the driveway is not wanted on the south side of Ridge Road due to the fact that if that did become the entrance, then that would become the lot frontage, and it would have to be set back 30 meters at that point. Is that possibly the reason why you want the dual access from the other side? Because then the lot frontage would be on the east side instead of on the south side.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Marcus. It's a bit of an unusual circumstance with the unopened road right-of-way, and we are working with your legal department to ensure that we have the nuances of the zoning bylaw correct as far as what is the actual frontage on this lot. From my perspective, although the road is unopened, that still represents frontage to the benefit of my client on a municipal road, albeit unopened. However, there may be an interpretation that the only frontage that my client enjoys is that angular frontage on Ridge Road, which in fact does not meet the current conditions or the current width provisions of the existing zoning bylaw. So we will take whatever direction is provided to us by staff should they see fit to approve this lot by creating the necessary frontage variances at the Committee of Adjustment after Council approves, if they see fit in their wisdom to approve the zoning bylaw. We're not concerned about setback necessarily. We just think it's from a market and a privacy perspective, it's better to have a singular driveway to each of the two units, but our client can live with both. the joint access and driveway will serve both properties well. It's not an unusual circumstance to see one driveway serving 2 units as long as there's an agreement between the owners. So that's a detail, I think, for the variance that we're going to be seeking in the future. I'm not sure if I answered your question. Maybe the planners have a better response because they understand your zoning bylaw better, but there is a detail there with respect to where do we end up with the variances on this particular site. Right now we're just dealing with, do you feel it's appropriate to go to R1 to facilitate the future creation of an extra lot?
I appreciate it. I guess I'll save that question also for Mr. Ramuno when we get into our portion. So thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Bruto? Seeing none, I'll close this portion of the meeting. I will ask someone to put the, thank you, Mr. Bruto.
Okay. Thank you.
Someone to put the recommendation on the floor so we can discuss it, please. Councillor Perry, Councillor Kim. Speakers, please. Councillor Maracas. Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess, Mr. Ramuno, if you could answer that question for me, is if you had the driveway coming in from the south side, would that be considered the frontage, and then the dwelling would have to have a 30-meter setback at that point?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I mean, some good points. That's true. If the unopened portion of Ridge Road was considered the front yard, then they would either have to set the dwelling back further, or they would need an exception to that provision. I will say, though, that there are some challenges here. I mean, it's as you can see, it's a irregular shaped lot. With respect to Ridge Road, the access really ends at that easterly edge of the property. There is an unopened road portion, but our legal department is looking at that. There may be a requirement for an easement over that because it isn't paved. And then we are dealing with the review of the environmental impact assessments because, there's a significant amount of tree coverage and vegetation on the site. So a number of things that staff need to take a look at.
Thank you, Mr. Ramuno, and I appreciate that. And as far as where the driveway is, the only concern I would have is a shared driveway. I know that if I owned one house, I'd kind of have a bit of an issue sharing that driveway. So if there was ever a sale, I think there might be some issues down the road as far as that, but maybe not. But just something to think about. But I mean, I'd like to get those reports, and then we can take a look at everything when that comes back. So and see where we go from there. I was just curious about that setback, and thank you.
Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm looking at, Linda, is it possible you could turn my mic up so I don't have to lean in so far? Thank you. I'm looking at page 9 of our report. The entirety of this newly proposed lot is in an environmental protection zone. And on page 3 of our report, and it was already mentioned by our planner, 4th paragraph down, the environmental protection area designation is the most significant of ecological importance within the secondary plan area, and it is the intention to protect ecological features and landforms within this designation. This also is on the Oak Ridges Moraine. My inclination is not to approve this, simply for that very important reason. But other than that, in a state residential, a shared drive like that it's just not part of a state residential. Would set terrible precedent. The existing home was already permitted by the Committee of Adjustment. So there's already been a variance allowed for this one lot. And I can't see approving a second one. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Ramuno, what does Lake Simcoe say about this?
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have some preliminary comments from Lake Simcoe, and they've asked for some additional information from the applicant with respect to the environmental impact assessment. So we don't have final comments from them yet, but again, this is something that staff is obviously interested in, and we are also reviewing those environmental reports, and our Parks Department is as well.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'll just repeat. It's a real insult to any attempt that council makes to provide environmental protection for the town of Aurora to allow something like this to go forward?
Councillor April.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not following Councillor Gardner's concerns. That Ridge Road is beautiful. It's a lot of forest, and we're seeing it's the last frontier in development, and we're adhering to the densities, which is the basic concern, and all environmental concerns, which are both being met here. So, Mr. Ramuno, just to be sure that where I am, we allow for how many units? This is the OP34, and it conforms with this.
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is within that OPA 34 secondary plan area. The lot size in this area, because as was mentioned, it's part of the estate residential area, and so they're on private septic systems, so the official plan and zoning bylaw requires that those lots serviced by septic systems be a minimum of 1.5 acre lot size.
So it's meeting as all the other dwellings on Ridge Road are, but some of the lots I see are bigger, is that correct?
That's correct.
But we allow for a minimum of at least 1.5 acres.
Yes.
We had on Wellington by Bathurst